With Bungie's 30th anniversary on the horizon and a sandbox full of changes we get to unpack, I'm pretty sure that I've hit the nail on the head with this video. Because hello everybody, I'm Hater and welcome back to another Destiny video, where in this one, I'm going to be breaking down a tether build that will allow you to have almost infinite abilities and at the same time carry you through any endgame content. But before we dive into the video, if you guys have not already, consider subscribing to the channel, leave a like on the video if you use the build, and if there's anything you want to see me cover in the future, then leave a comment down in the comment section. Now with all that out of the way, let's get into it. And the first thing we're going to be talking about is the Bottom Tree Tether Hunter ability Vanish in Smoke receiving a buff in the 30th anniversary, where instead of the overall recharge rate being 96 seconds for a smoke, it's now going to be a flat 75 seconds. Meaning we are able to use our smoke bombs much more often to gain invisibility. So with that in mind, I really wanted to make a build focusing around the Vanish and Smoke ability since it's really good in endgame content. And that's going to be leading us into the exotic we'll be using with this build, the Omnioculus, which with its perk Beyond the Veil, we're going to gain a second smoke bomb charge and have damage resistance while we're invisible. Then whenever we make an ally invisible, they're also going to gain the same damage resistance and give us melee energy back based on how many allies we smoke. This exotic is borderline broken with Bottom Tree Tether Hunter because of the certain perks the subclass has. Because whenever we are using the subclass and we smoke somebody or ourselves, it's going to proc the perk Combat Provision, where whenever we smoke somebody, it's going to give us grenade energy back, and whenever we deal damage with grenades, it's going to give us melee energy back. This paired with the other perk on the subclass Lockdown is going to allow us to really synergize well with the Omnioculus. Then on top of that, we can make it even better with certain mods to allow us to fit the role of the Infinite Invis Hunter. Because moving over to the mods, we're going to be using a Charge with Light build for this. Starting off with the obvious, we're going to be using Taking Charge, where whenever we pick up an Orb of Power, it's going to give us a stack of Charged with Light. And to synergize with this, we're going to be using 2 power preservations in our helmet, so that whenever we use our super, we're going to be proccing the Mobius Quiver, creating more orbs of power for our teammates so that they can use their super much more often and give us orbs of power. Then to use those stacks of Charge with Light, we're going to be using Protective Light because it's the most obvious to use in endgame content, where whenever we get into the situation that our shields break by enemy damage, it's going to consume all stacks of Charge with Light, giving us a 4 times damage resistance. This is here mostly to serve as a safety net so that whenever our smokes are down and we don't have the damage resistance from Omnioculus, Protective Light is going to keep us alive. Then whenever we have full stacks of Charge with Light and we're not taking too much damage to proc Protective Light, we're going to be using the mod Firepower to spend stacks of Charge with Light on to give us more grenade energy back. More specifically, we're going to be using 2 of them to give us 30% of our grenade back whenever we throw our grenade. Then finally, over at our cloak, we're going to be using Particle Deconstruction as a filler option to whatever you want to run. Because of how flexible the build is, we can pretty much put whatever we want inside of our cloak depending on what we're running. If say one of your teammates is running Particle Deconstruction or 2 of them are, you don't technically need to run it. I personally like running a mod called Bomber to give me more grenade energy back whenever I use my dodge. And then you can also use the extra space to fit something like Focusing Lens in for your super. Because on top of Mobius Quiver creating more orbs, whenever you hit an enemy with the tether, the second one after that while they're tethered is going to deal tremendously more damage, and stacking on top of Focusing Lens if they're affected by stasis. Now that we've gone over what all of the mods do, let's actually inspect my hunter and go over where to put the mods and what energies you should have your armor. For the helmet, I would highly recommend that you have this as stasis so that you can fit either 2 power preservations inside of it or run a ammo finder of your choice. Then on top of this is where we're going to be putting our Taking Charge since it's the most neutral piece of gear that we have. For the arms, you can get a little experimental with this because you can either have this as solar, void, or stasis. What I'm running in mine are void arms with the Protective Light mod inside so that it's not taking up too much space for the champion mods. However, if you're doing some kind of content, endgame content, low tier content that doesn't involve champions, or at least doesn't have a lot of champions, you can use 2 grenade Kickstarter mods to give you energy back the moment you throw your grenade. This just means you would have to change the build up a little bit because both Grenade Kickstart and Firepower don't stack. To accommodate this, we'll have to change out the 2 Firepowers for a Supercharged and a Charged Up instead, which when I get to the full overview, it'll make more sense. Over on our Omnioculus, you're going to want this to be solar, And this is where your firepower is going to sit inside of it. And because resist mods are so cost efficient, we're able to keep 2 of them inside of our chest piece at the same time as rocking whatever we want. And of course, if you're rocking the grenade kickstart variant of this build, then this is where your supercharge is going to sit. Moving on over to the boots, you're going to want these to be solar or void for the kickstart variant. What I like to run inside of my boots is innervation or a recuperation and then a scav of choice. And when it's void, I like to use better already instead. Then also, if you're running the firepower build, this is where your other firepower is going to sit. Or if you're running the grenade kickstart version, you're going to be using protective light here instead. Then finally, moving over to the cloak, this is where I put the particle deconstruction. Of course, you have the option of making this whatever you want or whatever best fits your current loadout. The other mod that I like running in this slot is definitely going to be a bomber, which will add more grenade energy on top of the current amount we're getting whenever we dodge. But then you can trade this out for something like focusing lens if somebody in your fire team is running stasis. A charged up could also fit here. Overall, you have these options of running either the firepower oriented build or the grenade kickstart oriented build. You realistically cannot go wrong with either. The only downside is that it is heavily dependent on if there are champions or not in the current activity. For solo lost sectors or GMs or even endgame raids that contain a lot of champions, you're going to lean more towards the firepower build. But if you're running a type of activity that is not champion reliant, then you can lean more towards the grenade kickstart variant. Overall, your loadout is going to follow suit. For the firepower build, you want to have your helmet stasis, 3 pieces of gear that are solar, and 1 piece of gear that is void. Then the mods taking charge, protective light, 2 firepowers, and then whatever you want inside of your cloak. For the grenade kickstart variant, you're going to keep the stasis helmet, you're going to keep the taking charge, you're going to keep 1 piece of gear void and then have it with protective light. Then you want to trade your arms out for something stasis to fit 2 grenade kickstarts in, and then 2 solar pieces of gear that have supercharged and charged up. And then for the cloak, it's going to be the same as your firepower build. You can pretty much fit whatever you want in here that fits the scenario. For some final notes on the build, now that we've actually got the mods down and you understand where to put the mods in whatever piece of gear you have, there's still kind of a flow to the build that you have to do in order to get the most out of it. For starters, always pay attention to your smoke cooldown and your grenade cooldown. You don't want to use one or the other when one of them is full. Examples of this are when you're in scenarios when you have your grenade and both your smokes at the same time. You don't want to throw your grenade when you have full smokes, and you don't want to throw your smokes when you have a full grenade. All in all, guys, I think that's going to be wrapping up the video for today as per usual. I had a lot of fun putting this build together because I've actually never ran a bottom tether build. So actually getting in and getting my hands on it, then working around with whatever I have was really fun to play around with. So anyways, if you guys have any questions, then feel free to leave them down in the comments. I will get to them as fast as I can. And I'm going to catch you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.